The speaker who states an interrogative clause applies the modal verb for a general verb and invert the order of the be verb and the subject in a clause that a be verb is applied in. The effect of applying a modal verb and state the interrogative clause with the modal verb is to inform the listeners that the speaker intends to, the speaker wants to receive or respond from the interrogative clause. And, the third of the modal verb informs the listeners of the subject, the number of the subject, whether the subject participates in the conversation or not, with the very first word. As soon as the listeners hear the interrogative clause starting with do, the listeners might prepare to respond to the speaker about the subject whose number whose number is singular and the subject participates in the conversation with the speaker, the whose number is plural and the subject participates in the conversation with the speaker, whose number and whose number is plural and the subject participate in the conversation with the speaker. If the speaker starts the speaker invert the order of the subject and the be verb. So the interrogative clause that a be verb is applied and starts with the be verb or is the listeners are able to prepare to respond from the statement of the speaker. This is the interrogative clause with the verb and the speaker who wants to emphasize that the definition of the verb applied in the negative interrogative clause is too obvious and the speaker considers that there cannot be other opinion. The speaker assures the definition, an experience, a condition, or an action from the definition of the verb. There is a famous lyric, "Isn't she lovely?" This means that the speaker assures that the condition of the subject, she, described by the adjective, lovely. So we can understand that the speaker applies the adverb not to emphasize the original intent of the speaker. So the listeners respond from the negative interrogative clause that accords with whether the original definition of the verb is true or not. So when the listeners agree on the condition of the subject, she, the listeners can respond to the speaker, yes, she's lovely. When the listeners the speaker can want to express the additional intent after a declarative statement is completely stated. So the speaker applies the appended interrogative clause that is also applied to emphasize the assurance of the speaker on the definition of the verb applied in the declarative statement. She is lovely, isn't she? There is a clause. She's lovely, isn't she? The appended interrogative clause, isn't she, reveals the emphasis of the speaker who truly agrees on the condition of the subject, she, described by the subjective complement, lovely, that is an adjective. So if the listeners agree on the condition of the subject, she, then the listeners will respond to the speaker in this way. Yes, she is. Yes, this means yes, she is lovely. The speaker who applies on appended interrogative clause that is stated positively, the speaker states the original statement into the negative statement. In these clauses, the speaker intends to emphasize the definition of the verb in the original statement. So the speaker asks the listeners about the assured experience, condition, or action from the definition of the verb in the original statement. Let's suppose there are two clauses. She wasn't messy, was she? The speaker assures that the condition of the subject, she, can be described by adding the appended interrogative clause that is stated positively. So the listeners who agree on the definition of the verb was can respond about whether the listeners agree on the definition of the be verb was, and the subjective complement messy or not. The listeners can respond to agree on the definition of the be verb was and the subjective complement messy, that is an adjective, properly describe the condition of the subject in the past in this way. Yes, she was messy. Whether the clause stated in the positive statement or in the negative statement, the listeners respond with the accordance on the definition of the verb. This can be understood with the fact that the adverb not is applied to emphasize the intention of the speaker. Thank you for watching.